Then on another interview, I went over and we made arrangements to see Tadashi Sato. And of course, I had known Tadashi, but not well. He was very excited that I was coming to see him and visit him in his house and studio. And so when we went into his studio, he immediately started bringing out painting after painting to show me. And finally I said, you know, this is so wonderful to see your work. I really, you know, it was such a great experience. But that's not what I'm here for. I said, we already have one of your paintings in the exhibit. It is one of the ones that Pandio Kouchi has. So I'm not here to get a painting. I'm really wanting to hear your stories. You know, what your life has been like. I said, please tell me something about what it was like working in New York City. So he started relating different stories about his life there. He finally came to one on where he told me about a friend of his in New York by the name of Larry Kim, who was a writer and struggling to make a living in New York. And he would often, Larry would often show up on the Sato's doors, at the Sato's door late at night, you know, asking if they had any leftovers that he could eat, and they would probably be able to give him some rice and tea. But one night, Larry Kim showed up at his door very late. There was this loud knock on the door, and Larry had been to a party at the Waldorf Astoria where he had now was working, doing something for some Broadway play. And they were having a party after the performance at the Waldorf Astoria, and he overheard some of the directors and the actors talking about, you know, their art collecting. And Larry had imbibed a bit by that point, and he walked up to them and he said, do you know Tadashi Sato's work? And they had never, of course, heard of Tadashi Sato. And he says, well, if you haven't seen a Tadashi Sato, you haven't seen anything yet. And they were so intrigued by, you know, the sincerity of Larry Kim that they finally decided, and Larry was very persuasive and said, you got to come and see them right now. And so this was late at night. There was this knock on the Sato's door, and he brought these strangers to Tadashi's studio to see his work. And for Tadashi said that was the breakthrough. They immediately that evening bought work. I mean, late at night they bought work, and he said from that point on he never had to go back to working as a guard in the museum. He was able to keep going and support his family. Eventually he moved back to Hawaii here and was a successful artist for the rest of his life. And I said to him, I said, Tadashi, I said, do you have anything from Larry? Anything he ever gave you? He says, yeah, I have one thing. And he walked back into sort of an area of his studio, sort of a closet, and he came out with this book, 2 volumes of Marcel Proust's Remembrance of Things Past. And I said, tell me about that. And he said that when Tadashi was leaving New York, Larry came to him with these 2 volumes of Proust's work with a beautiful inscription in it talking about their friendship, that he was a truly great artist. It was such a beautifully written testament to Tadashi and to their friendship. I said, Tadashi, this is what I want in the exhibit. And so we have the book there open to the inscription to Tadashi from Larry Kim. Just before we sort of come to a close on this, I'd like to talk about two pieces in the exhibition. that kind of have a very interesting confluence of coming together. And in a way that's kind of like what the exhibition is about, the coming together of people and that. It's like water. The author of the essay for the catalog, Paul Wood, compares what happens to two great rivers coming together, and the water when they come together, flow together, and while they become one in the new river, they also, each water retains its own identity. And so there's a kind of beautiful analogy here. Two works that really exemplify that confluence of waters coming together is the kappa on the wall here and the portrait next to it. When Rob Spencer went off to the mainland to college, he took with him this wonderful kappa that was made by his great-great-grandmother. In the process of, and that, to him, that was a very, very special piece. It was his connection with Hawaii, and he had that hanging on his wall in his room. In the process of doing the various interviews, the people who were doing that one day interviewed another lady, and she mentioned to them that for her, there was a person that was very important to her, and that was her mother, who, even though she really wasn't of a generation that could run her own business, she was a very enterprising woman. And she said this portrait of her was very important because it had inspired the daughter to run her own business. In the process of talking, the people who were doing the interview realized that the lady in the portrait was actually Rob Spencer's great-great-grandmother. And yet, the two of them had sort of not known about the existence of the other. You know, the family had been large, and you know, there was this, you know, loss of sort of a memory of or connection. And so, at the opening, what was so wonderful is the descendants of this lady, one who owned the kappa that was made by the lady in the portrait. The descendants got together for the first time. So there's wonderful little connections that were made through this exhibition.